Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Blackrock Foundry Elemental Shaman Guide. In this video, we'll be going in-depth into the various bosses of the Blackrock Foundry on its normal and heroic difficulty, discussing how to get the most out of the Elemental Shaman for each encounter, so that you can do the most damage, be as useful as possible, and do the best that you can. If you'd like more general tips about how to play the Elemental Shaman, you can find a link to my full guide for it in the description. Before we begin, make sure you have a stack of Tomes of the Clear Mind on you. They stack up to 200 and you'll be swapping talents very regularly, so make sure you have plenty of these available. Now let's jump straight into it, getting started with the trash up to Gruul, the first boss. If your raid CCs, make sure to use Hex to help out and keep an eye on its duration. Use Wind Shear to interrupt the Iron Flamebinder's Unbind Flame, and also consider using Thunderstorm to knock back the Unbound Flames summoned by them to interrupt their channeled raid damage, because it's very nasty. Keep a Grounding Totem down in case a Lava Burst from the enemies gets through. If you're ever fighting 3 or more enemies, get as many Earthquakes buffed with Enhanced Chain Lightning down as you can. Earthquake is your primary source of damage for trash. Stay at range of the Ogron Hauler, feel free to pop your Ascendants on it, use Spirit Walker's Grace to step to the side of its Slag Breath, and consider using Ancestral Guidance after a Ground Stomp comes in to help the healers out. Get Earthquake out on the Ironworkers as soon as you can, as they die very fast. Do the same thing with the Slag Shop workers. Chain Lightning, Earthquake, Chain Lightning, Earthquake. Keep Flame Shocks up on the 2 Slag Shop brutes, while focusing on Earthquake for the smaller adds. Similarly, do your single target rotation on the Gronling Labourers as a filler for whenever your Earthquake is on cooldown, or you can't get Enhanced Chain Lightning. Consider using Ancestral Guidance when fighting multiple Labourers and they use Gronling Smash at the same time. Throw down a Healing Rain while fighting Karnal the Cruel and the Gronling Labourers, as the raid damage here is quite high. Now for Gruul. For this fight, I suggest using either Unleashed Fury or Primal Elementalist, depending on your raid group's damage. If Gruul will die quickly, which is often the case, then go with Primal Elementalist. If it's progression and you're struggling, go with Unleashed Fury for smoother damage throughout a longer fight. I suggest going with Storm Elemental Totem if you don't have the 4-set tier bonus, and Elemental Fusion if you do. You can use either Echo of the Elements or Elemental Mastery. I don't really ever feel the difference on this fight, so you can use either. I prefer Echo of the Elements. This is a very static fight with bursts of movement. For this reason, Glyph of Spirit Walker's Focus is a pretty good idea. Now, for Gruul himself, you'll likely be Bloodlusting on the pull. Take advantage of this by making the Bloodlust part of your opener, and get a really powerful Flame Shock on him right after you hit Lust. Or Heroism if you're a Smelly Alliance Shaman. You'll want to use either an Astral Shift or a Shamanistic Rage for an Inferno Slice. Try to never be hit by one of these slices without one of these damage reductions active. It's not possible to do every time, but get as close to it as you can. Stick with your single target rotation. If you ever get hit by Petrifying Slam, use either Spirit Walker's Grace or instant cast spells to move away from other raiders. Always be casting. Don't just stand there waiting to be stunned by the last tick of Petrifying Slam's debuff. Use instant cast spells such as reapplying your Flame Shock, or using an early Earth Shock, or refreshing your Searing Totem. If nothing else is available, pop down a Healing Stream Totem right before you get stunned. If you have the 4-set tier bonus available, it's a great idea to get the most out of it by using Earth Shock, followed by the free Lava Surge, to move a fair distance while maintaining your optimal rotation. If you're lucky, you can essentially keep your rotation going right up until you're stunned. Never get hit by Cave-Ins or Overhead Smash. Use Guidance just after an Inferno Swipe hits a group. Get away from other raiders once Destructive Rampage begins to reduce the chance of having to move from an overhead smash. Pre-pot on the pull and use your second potion when your Ascendance is back up, but keep an eye on the Petrifying Slam timer to make sure you're not stunned while you're in Ascendance. This is a big DPS loss. Now for the trash up to Orgorger. AoE down the Acid Backs with Chain Lightning and Earthquake, and make sure to give them and the tanks some distance, as they'll likely be moving towards you, leaving acid on the ground. Don't stand in the bad. For the Nashers, if you get targeted by a Fixate, just run away with Spirit Walker's Grace active while continuing to cast. These guys cannot be Thunderstormed backwards. Try to place Earthquakes ahead of the Nashers and the Acid Backs so they have to run through them, rather than putting them on top of them, reducing the amount of time they spend in your Earthquake. The Crystal Backs can just be AoE down like the rest of the trash, there's nothing you really have to worry about with them. Orgorger is next. For this fight, you'll want to use Echo of the Elements, Elemental Blast, and I would suggest Storm Elemental Totem. If you have the 4-set tier bonus, you could consider going Elemental Fusion instead, but it's really close. I prefer Storm Elemental Totem. Stack up with your group, but if they start just out of range of the boss, make sure you start just outside of the group so that you can still cast on the pull. You can cast at Orgorger through the walls. They don't block line of sight to him, but they will block line of sight to other raiders and the crates of ore in the second phase. Bloodlust on the pull. Activate Spirit Walker's Grace as soon as the first Blackrock pool comes in to maintain your opening DPS. Use your Shamanistic Rage or Astral Shift to help survive the acid torrents. Consider using Guidance just after an acid torrent, or if the boss gets a cast of Blackrock Barrage off. If you're using Storm Elemental Totem, you should have time to put down your Fire Elemental Totem afterwards with no issues. He should be at around 50% energy when your Storm Elemental ends, assuming the interrupts are done correctly. Once you get close to Orgorger, you can help interrupt if you worry that one might get through. Once the second phase begins, start applying Flame Shock on the crates of ore as you move with your team. Always keep an eye on Orgorger and predict where he will move next. Don't take any risks. Corners are your friends here. Try to get as many Lava Surge procs and Fulmination hits as possible to kill the ore crates nice and fast. Once you're waiting for Orgorger to finish his rolling, damage him if he's in range. Just don't go out of your way to try and get to him, because you might potentially get hit. Use Healing Stream Totem, Healing Rain, and Healing Surge if you have nothing else to do. Help the healers out, never be doing nothing. Once Orgorger finishes his rolling phase, use Spirit Walker's Grace to get to the new stacking location for the range. Then, the fight repeats itself. Continue until the big brute is dead. Keep an eye out for potentially missed interrupts and help out however you can with guidance and your personal survivability cooldowns. Try to get one Ascendance out each phase that he's not rolling. You'll want to pre-pot and use your second potion as soon as Ascendance is back up and you're still in phase 1. Moving on to the next boss. Since the footage you're seeing on screen is from a farm run, we'll be moving on to the Blast Furnace. It's very likely, however, that your guild will not go in this order if you're still progressing. There's only one trash mob before the Blast Furnace, and it's a mini-boss. Do your single target rotation, and consider using Ascendance at the very start of this fight. The behemoth has a lot of health, so it should be up in time for the Blast Furnace. Especially if your group tends to delay before you actually pull the Blast Furnace, handling things like groups. Whenever he throws a volcanic bomb near you, try to use Spirit Walker's Grace so that the knockback doesn't interrupt you. Line of sight his blast wave by hiding behind the pillars or inside the doorway leading into the room. Blast Furnace is next. For this fight, I would suggest using Echo of the Elements, Elemental Blast, and Liquid Magma. Your role in this fight will ordinarily be to clean up adds, a role that you can excel at, so go all out. Depending on your strategy, you may Bloodlust on the pull. Here, we do not. Assuming that the Forge Master is being pulled to your side, after you pre-pot, get your Elemental out and get your first spell off, get your initial Flame Shock out on the Forge Master, activate Liquid Magma, project it as close to your side's Bellows Operator as you can, use Spirit Walker's Grace, get your Lava Burst out while the tanks move the Forge Master to the Bellows Operator, get both of your Chain Lightning and Earthquakes out, activate Ascendance, focus on the Bellow Operator with Lava Beam, and use Earthquake whenever it's available. That's your pull. If you get targeted by a Rupture, move to the side with the aid of Unleash Flame. Make sure you drop bombs and stick near the Regulator. Focus the adds with Chain, Lightning, and Earthquake as long as there are 3 or more. Do your single target rotation on Feldspar when there are no adds available. Use Liquid Magma on cooldown. Interrupt the Furnace Engineers with Wind Shear if you notice them run towards the Regulators and start casting Repair. If you pick up a bomb, use Ghost Wolf to get to the Regulator nice and quick, and use either Astral Shift or Shamanistic Rage to lower the damage you take. Once the Regulators are dead, it's time to clean up adds. As the groups move together, if you have Spirit Walker's Grace available, use it. Focus on keeping Earthquake down on as many enemies as possible, and use Liquid Magma on cooldown, remembering to keep your Fire Totem near enemies using Totemic Projection, and make sure you have at least 10 seconds left on the Fire Totem before you use Liquid Magma. If you get extra Bellows Operators right as you transition, use Ancestral Guidance while AoEing to help the healers out. The damage here can really spike on the tanks, so do whatever you can to help while cleaning up the adds. Once everything is under control, your team will likely decide to take down a Slag Elemental. If you're fixated, move near an Elementalist to get the Slag Elemental over to you. Once the Slag Elemental dies and the Elementalist is vulnerable, blow her up as quickly as you can. Get as many earthquakes buffed by enhanced chain lightning down on her as is humanly possible, as the damage it causes is really high even on single targets. Do your single target rotation on her when you don't have the means to get a buffed earthquake off. Dispel the Elementalist's reactive Earth Shield using Purge. It's much easier for you than it is for a Hunter or a Rogue, who have to spend either focus or energy. I believe Rogues have to use energy. The point is, Purge is really useful. Use it. After the Elementalist dies, you'll likely be asked to do a bit of cleanup. Focus on getting as many buffed Earthquakes and Liquid Magmas out as possible. Interrupt any Fire Callers you can. Keep an eye out for when the next Slag Elemental dies. Then, nuke down the second Elementalist. If you find yourself struggling to kill the Elementalists in time, consider using Ascendance for this second Elementalist. It should be available. After the second Elementalist dies, you'll be moving over to the other side of the room. Use Spirit Walker's Grace as you move across the room to maintain your DPS. Single target down any Fire Callers that the team asks, and get as many buffed Earthquakes and Liquid Magmas out as you can, just like normal. As soon as the third Elementalist is vulnerable, kill her and dispel her reactive Earth Shield. Make sure you're not near anyone else if you get Volatile Fire. Once more, clean the room using buffed Earthquakes and Liquid Magmas. Interrupt the Fire Callers. Kill the Slag Elemental, then the Elementalist. Some guilds might Bloodlust at this point to help with the Elementalist and then for cleaning up any of the adds, but some also wait until the heart is completely vulnerable. In any case, once the Elementalist dies, the heart of the mountain will be freed, and you have one more wave of add to clean up. Use Liquid Magma and buffed Earthquakes, but make sure you keep a Flame Shock up on the heart of the mountain. Once it's single target time, use your second potion whenever your Ascendance becomes available. Stay near the edge of melts, and if you get targeted, get as far away from the ranged team as you can. Try to put your melt near the edge of another melt to help save room. One good trick you can use here is to use your survivability cooldowns, activate Unleash Flame, activate Ghost Wolf, run into a melt, drop yours and immediately run out. If you do it fast, it saves room, but this is pretty advanced. It's not entirely necessary, but if you're really struggling on room, it might help. Use your Fire Elemental once you're focusing the heart of the mountain. Consider Flame Shocking one Slag Elemental for bonus Lava Surges. If there are multiple Elementals up, and you can get an Enhanced Chain Lightning buff, then do so and put Earthquake down on the heart. Other than that, pop your Ancestral Guidance, your Health Tonic, your personal cooldowns, and anything else you have to survive. Watch your feet, stay calm, and nuke the heart of the mountain until it dies. Pre-pot before the fight begins, and use your second potion as you fight the heart of the mountain. Now, moving on to Hansgar and Franzok. You can jump down the elevator shaft and not die. I'm serious, you can. For the two Blackrock Enforcers, keep Flame Shock up on both of them and do your single target rotation. Use Chain Lightning instead of Lightning Bolt for filler. For the pack of Orcs on the belts, stick to Earthquakes to get all the damage out that you can. For Hansgar and Franzok, hereby known as Hans and Franz, you'll want to use Echo of the Elements, Unleashed Fury, and either Elemental Fusion if you have the Forset bonus, or Storm Elemental Totem if you do not. Make sure you unglyph Chain Lightning for this fight. Unfortunately, this encounter is probably the weakest for Elemental Shaman, as it involves plenty of movement and only 2 targets, meaning no Earthquakes get to be thrown around. You should probably use Glyph of Spirit Walker's Focus since you'll be doing a lot of bursts of movement, but you don't have to do this, as these bursts tend to come in such quick succession that having a long Spirit Walker's Grace duration will be just as effective over the course of the fight. Start on Franzok, and keep Flame Shock up on both of them. Do your single target rotation on Franzok and use Ascendance. Your group will likely Bloodlust on the pull, but they may not. Regardless, focus Franzok down, keep Flame Shock up on both targets, do your single target rotation on one, and try to use Chain Lightning as your filler when they're close together, although this can be really difficult to pull off. Most of the time you'll be fine just single targeting one of them. Make sure you stay on the metal beams in between the belts. As soon as the belts start moving, reapply your Flame Shock on Hansgar, as he's about to jump away from the encounter area. You'll have Searing Plates come in, shimmy to the left or the right of your metal beam to narrowly avoid them without going onto the belts and being moved. As this happens, you'll probably get a Disrupting Roar. Make sure you don't get interrupted, and use an instant cast spell if you're left with nothing to do while waiting. Just remember that when you get these roars may be different to when my raid team got them, due to the phases changing depending on health. Just keep an eye out for it, and stop casting if the roar will finish while you're casting a spell. The belts will stop. Once Hansgar lands, switch over to him while maintaining Flame Shocks on both of them. Once the belts start again, quickly put a Flame Shock on Franzok, as he's about to leap out of the encounter area. Get ready to dance. The Stamper phase will begin, going in a set pattern. Stick to your metal beam and narrowly avoid the stampers by moving to the edge of the beam. If you're not comfortable with doing this, feel free to just jump onto the belts and use Spirit Walker's Grace to maintain your rotation. In reality, you need to do very little movement during the stamper phase. Just get to the edge of the stamper if it's near you and narrowly avoid it. You'll take no damage. Of course, this requires quite a bit of coordination, so practice. Once the stampers end, the belts will stop moving, and Franzok will jump back down into the fray. There'll be another disrupting roar, so make sure you don't get interrupted. Hansgar will jump up next, the belts will activate, and you'll get searing plates. Once again, avoid them by shimmying to the left and the right of your metal beam. Then, Hansgar will return, the searing plates will end, and you'll have to deal with both bosses and the stampers. Spirit Walker's Grace is a good idea for this part of the fight, it's pretty hectic. Use Ascendance with your Spirit Walker's Grace when both are available. Pre-pot on the pull and use your second potion when you Ascendance for a second time. Use your elementals on cooldown. This fight is not great for us, just do the best you can. Don't expect to top the meters for this one though. Now onto the trash up to Flamebender Kagraz. Earthquake is your best friend here, use it as much as you possibly can. Make sure you glyph Chain Lightning so that you can rip this trash apart. Spread Flame Shocks on the tougher Iron Flame Twisters and Iron Taskmasters, and get out as many Earthquakes as possible. The tanks will get disoriented here at times and they'll lose aggro. So if you get aggro, which is probably going to happen, Thunderstorm enemies away to buy yourself time. Moldana Two-Blade will randomly jump around with Ember in the wind, so make sure you're away from the raid team so that you reduce the chance of her teleporting behind you. Now for Flamebender Kagraz. For this fight, I suggest using Echo of the Elements, Elemental Blast, and either Storm Elemental Totem if the fight is on farm and won't last long, or Elemental Fusion if the fight is part of progression and will last longer. Consider using Glyph of Spirit Walker's Focus here. This fight, again, isn't fantastic for Elemental Shaman, but you can get some pretty decent numbers here, and you have a few opportunities to help out the raid. Most guilds will Bloodlust on the pull. If you can get away with it, put a Flame Shock on Aknor and focus the Flamebender. But if he's not dying fast enough, focus on Aknor to just get him down nice and fast. If he jumps within 5 yards of you, activate Spirit Walker's Grace to avoid being interrupted by his knockback. Once he dies, it's just the Flamebender to think about. Make sure you stay spread and step to the side or just behind a fire line. Stay close to it in case you get targeted again to save room for the rest of the raid. Reposition if there's a blade close to you. Use Spirit Walker's Grace if you have to move from an ability. Once she reaches 50 energy, reapply Flame Shock on her as you'll be focusing on the Cinder Wolves for a while. Use Earth Grab or Earthbind Totem combined with Totemic Projection to help slow these wolves, and remember that Thunderstorm does not knock them back, but it does slow them. Keep a Flame Shock up on both wolves. If the two wolves ever get close to the boss at the same time, use Chain Lightning to get a buffed Earthquake off. Do not kite the Cinder Wolves to try and make this the case. Just take advantage of it if you notice that you can. Once the wolves die, it's time for the Flamebender to deal raid damage. Assuming you don't have the debuff, you'll be stacked up. Consider throwing out a healing rain to help out the healers, and use Ancestral Guidance and your survivability spells to help mitigate damage for this phase. Once it ends, spread out, avoid stuff on the ground, and repeat the fight. Use Spirit Walker's Grace for any moments where you have to shuffle to avoid abilities like a Fire Line, a Cinder Wolf, a weapon, or a Molten Torrent, and use Unleash Flame to move longer distances when you kite a wolf, move a Molten Torrent into the melee, or when you stack up or spread out before or after a Firestorm. If the healers are struggling to keep someone up who's standing out for a Firestorm, consider using a Healing Surge to help keep them alive. Pre-pot on the pull and when you use your second Ascendance. Moving on to Chromog. You likely won't have much trash left from your way up to the Flamebender, but if you do, Earthquake them all to death. Now, about Chromog. Ordinarily, I'm asked to heal this one, and you may be too. Have your Resto Spec prepared if you have one, but assuming you're allowed to DPS it, I'd suggest going with Echo of the Elements, Elemental Blast, and either Storm Elemental Totem if you don't have the Forset bonus, or Elemental Fusion if you do. Chromog is a fairly uninteresting fight for most of its duration, but it has some moments where you can abuse Earthquake. Assuming you don't Bloodlust on the pull, pop all of your cooldowns and start nuking him as soon as the fight begins. There are a lot of predictable bursts of damage in this fight. Smash and Stone Breath both come in predictably. Use Astral Shift, Shamanistic Rage, and Ancestral Guidance as much as you can to help out your healers. Avoid the Rune of Crushing Earth, just don't stand in it or be between the hands in any kind of capacity. Once Chromog begins his Rune of the Grasping Earth phase, go to your rune using either Spirit Walker's Grace or a bunch of instant cast spells, get picked up, keep your Flame Shock up on Chromog, and start abusing Earthquake. Get a Chain Lightning out and put your Earthquake down on as many grasping hands as you can. Beware though, make sure you cast Chain Lightning on a clustered group of hands, as their hitboxes can be a bit strange. Just double check that you have the enhanced Chain Lightning buff before you throw out an Earthquake. If you haven't used Spirit Walker's Grace to get to your hand, use it to get back to the raid team once this phase is over. Then the fight simply repeats. It's all about surviving the heavy damage he throws out, so most of this fight revolves around your healers. But by using Ancestral Guidance, Healing Stream Totem, and even Healing Rain if you're worried about your raid, you can help alleviate the stress on your healers and make the fight easier. Pre-pot at the start of the fight and use your second potion during your second Ascendance, with your Bloodlust, when Chromog enrages. Now, onto Beast Lord Darmak. The 2 Iron Assembly Wardens can be single-targeted down, keeping Flame Shock up on both of them. Use Capacitor Totem or Thunderstorm to interrupt their damage reduction channel. Flame Shock the Thunderlord Beast Tamer and both of his Clefttooth, and if you can get away with it, use Chain Lightning and Earthquakes even though the damage is essentially wasted on the Orc until the beasts are dead. Next up, more Chain Lightning and Earthquakes for the Iron Marksman and Markog Abadir. For Beast Lord Darmak, you are going to want to use Echo of the Elements, Elemental Blast, and, in my opinion, Storm Elemental Totem, for the burst damage it provides near the end of the fight. Make sure you glyph Chain Lightning, and consider glyphing Shamanistic Rage too. This encounter has periods of intense AoE damage, so you want to get the most out of it that you can. Use your Storm Elemental on the pull, enter Ascendance, and chip away at Darmak's health with your single target rotation. As soon as the pack beasts appear, get 2 Earthquakes down if you can. They die really fast, so you have to be quick. If you can get away with it, get a 3rd enhanced Chain Lightning buff right before the pack dies, so that you can use your next Earthquake on the boss. While you have ads up, focus on getting those Earthquakes down, and while it's just the boss, do your single target rotation. Avoid spears, stop casting if one threatens to hit you, just get out of dodge immediately, and even consider using Unleash Flame to get away from them. They are really odd and sometimes they lag, and just get the hell away from them. Apply Flame Shock to as many of these spears as you can to help whittle them down. And sometimes you may have to go and just target them and get them down nice and fast. Depends what your raid wants you to do. Make sure you're spread out for Cruel Fang and Iron Crusher. If you're about to get knocked back by Iron Crusher because he's charged near you, consider using Spirit Walker's Grace to avoid being interrupted. Use Astral Shift, Shamanistic Rage, or Ancestral Guidance whenever a tantrum comes in to help out the healers, although you won't really be able to do this every time. Stay fairly close to Dreadwing, but don't be near the melee or the tanks. Just shimmy somewhat close to them. You don't want them to get hit by spears. Get away from his front as soon as possible when he starts breathing fire. Use Shamanistic Rage to dispel yourself if you get more than 1 stack of the fire. You can't do anything about combustion, so just hope the healers are on top of it and call out for a dispel if you're worried about it. Keep the AoE up with Earthquake whenever the pack beasts are up, single target the boss whenever the pack beasts are not up, and Flame Shock as many spears as you can. Pop Bloodlust in the last phase and nuke Darmak down with your second Ascendance and your second Storm Elemental Totem. Use your second potion here too, while remaining spread out to avoid Rend and Tear. Use survivability cooldowns for his tantrums. Now onto the trash up to Operator Thogar. In short, AoE. A lot. Earthquake with the enhanced Chain Lightning buff as much as you possibly can. Use survivability cooldowns when the Man-at-Arms does raid damage, maybe consider using Ancestral Guidance as well. Avoid the grate in the center of the area if you haven't killed the Blast Furnace. Kill the cannons on the nearby train as only the ranged can hit them. They don't have that much health, you can solo them. Then it's on to Operator Thogar. For this fight, you'll want to use Echo of the Elements, Elemental Blast, and either Storm Elemental Totem if you have the fight on farm and it'll be fast, or Elemental Fusion if you don't have it on farm and it'll be longer. Make sure you have Glyph of Chain Lightning too. There'll be plenty of things to AoE. Now, for this fight, the 4 tracks will be labelled as 1, 2, 3, and 4. The one closest to the entrance of the room, otherwise known as purple on screen, is 1. Red is track 2. Blue is track 3, and orange, the track the boss starts on, is 4. I'll go over the fight step by step, train by train, so you can get the most out of it. This is just how my guild does it. It should work for you, but if your guild doesn't do it like this, you'll just have to adapt. You'll likely Bloodlust on the pull. Use your Storm Elemental Totem, your Pre-Pot, and your Ascendants immediately. Start on the edge between tracks 2 and 3, so you're in range of the boss when the fight begins. Then shuffle into track 2 once the boss is pulled there. The best way to do this is to move there when you've got a global cooldown going, like, say, you just used Fulmination with your Earthshock, or you've just got a Lava Surge. A couple of trains will pass harmlessly by. Make sure you step out of the blue grenade zones at all times. Once the train on track 3 has passed, move there. A train full of adds will come along track 4, disgorging them onto track 3. Keep Thogar as your target and chain lightning off of him, getting your earthquakes down as soon as possible. Abuse the living daylights out of these Iron Raiders because they'll die fast. Try to get one last enhanced chain lightning buff out of them before they die so that you can put an earthquake down underneath Thogar. Since some of these are ranged, consider using Thunderstorm to knock any loose adds into the melee clump. A train will come by on track 2, then a cannon train will come along on track 1. As it's arriving, move over to track 2 and kill the Iron Gunnery Sergeant as quickly as you can. Then get to track 4, as track 3 will have a train coming across it soon. If your DPS is low, you may have to wait for the track 3 train to go by. Then go to track 3 and nuke and AoE down the elite adds dropped off by the train on track 2. Focus the Gromkar Man-at-Arms, but keep Earthquake up on all of the adds. And use Astral Shift, Shamanistic Rage, and Ancestral Guidance one at a time to help survive against his raid damage, and purge off of him any cauterizations that hit him from the Firemender. A train will come by on track 4, then it's time for the split. Go to either track 1 or 4 depending on your assignment. You'll have a group of adds to handle. AoE them down with Earthquake buffed by Enhanced Chain Lightning. If you have Operator Thogar with you, continue hitting him. Never be doing nothing. If you have nothing else to do, then just put down your Healing Rain and Healing Stream Totems. Then go to track 2. Avoid any more grenades that come in. You'll have trains on tracks 1 and 4. Next is a cannon train on track 4, but track 3 will have a train coming through it shortly afterwards. Stay at max range on track 2 and kill the Iron Gunnery Sergeant. It's doable without entering track 3, and although it may seem really close, you're safe. A train will stop on track 1 with more adds. At this point, Ascendance will be available, so use it and your second potion immediately. Get as many Lava Bursts off on Thogar as you can, and then use the remaining time to Lava Beam and Earthquake down the Iron Raiders and the Iron Crackshots that spawn. They'll die really fast. As this happens, you'll be moving to track 3. Spirit Walker's Grace is a good idea here. A train will go by on track 2. Go back to track 2 to avoid the train coming on track 3. Stay on track 2. A train will go by on track 4, then you'll get a bunch of adds. An elite train on track 3 and a cannon train on track 1. Get the cannon on track 1 down, then AoE down the elite adds. At this point, if your DPS is high, you can consider just nuking Thogar as we did here. Stay on track 3 for the duration of this. If your DPS is lower, there will be another split phase with some elite adds. Just AoE them down while dispelling the Man-at-Arms. Then you're getting close to Enrage, so nuke Thogar down before you get overwhelmed or run over by trains. Next up are the Iron Maidens and their trash. Again, you'll be doing lots of AoE here with Chain Lightning and Earthquake. Hit the Inferno totems when they spawn to prevent them from dealing heavy raid damage. Interrupt the Iron Earthbinder whenever you can. Stay at range of the tanks to avoid the Iron Mauler's box throw. And don't be near melee range of any of them. Now for the Iron Maidens. This is my favourite fight in here. Unglyph Chain Lightning, Glyph Spirit Walker's Focus, Unglyph Shamanistic Rage, run with Echo of the Elements, Elemental Blast, and either Storm Elemental Totem if you don't have the 4-set bonus, or Elemental Fusion if you do. This is a long fight with a lot of mechanics, so get ready to learn and get ready to dance. As always, use your cooldowns on the pull with a pre-pot. However, do not use Ascendance on the pull, you'll be using that in just a bit. Focus on one of the Maidens, usually Marak the Blooded first, but make your rotation focus on getting Enhanced Chain Lightninged Earthquakes out, Flame Shocking each target, and Lava Bursting whenever you have downtime. Use Earthshock once in a while when you don't have Earthquake available, you have 20 stacks of Fulmination, and Flame Shock is up on all targets. Most of your DPS will be coming from Earthquake in this fight, so keep it up as much as you possibly can. If you have to kite a rapid fire or move for a blood ritual, use Spirit Walker's Grace to continue your rotation. But if you can get away with it, try to save it for the ship phase. Once the first maiden jumps onto the ship, I'm assuming this one is Marak the Blooded, that's how we do it, Assuming you have to stay down in the encounter area, it's time to dance. Otherwise, go up onto the ship and use Ascendance on Marak's ad, combining it with Spirit Walker's Grace. If you're downstairs, spread out and use Ascendance, again with Spirit Walker's Grace. While there are only 2 maidens, you cannot get Enhanced Chain Lightning, so focus on single targeting one while keeping Flame Shock up on both. Chain Lightning them if they're close together as filler. By far the most difficult part of this phase are the bombardments. Try to time your spells so that you finish one right before you have to move. The less time you spend doing nothing in this fight, the better. Always be doing things. Use Spirit Walker's Grace with your Ascendance to assure its full duration is spent casting things. If you're moving and have nothing to cast, consider reapplying Flame Shock, using an Earth Shock, refreshing your Fire Totem as long as it's not an Elemental and will get replaced, or even putting down a Healing Stream Totem. Use Unleash Flame, reapply your shocks, just do something. Never be doing nothing. Once the bombardment phase is over, continue as before, AoEing down the maidens with Earthquake while focusing your single target on one of them. This time Admiral Garan, that's how we do it anyway. They'll get their 30 energy abilities at this point. Make sure you stack up for Penetrating Shot and use either Astral Shift or Shamanistic Rage to mitigate the damage. If you get targeted by Blood-Soaked Heartseeker, move to the side and use instant cast spells or Spirit Walker's Grace to support your spell casting. Then, the second boat phase begins and you'll be dancing around bombs as before. Your Ascendance should be available sometime during this phase. After a bit of dancing through bombs, it'll be back to all 3. If your DPS is high, you may get them into their second phase before another boat phase, but if not, then you'll have to do the dance once again. Slow it down. Don't be the one who screws the attempt over after 7 or 8 minutes because you were overzealous with your AoE. If you're worried about one of them getting too low, just go to single target. Once phase 2 begins, nuke your chosen maiden. Ordinarily Marak the Blooded with Bloodlust. Use your second potion with the Bloodlust and, hopefully, your third Ascendance. Save this third one for the last phase, not for the third boat phase if you have one. Focus on turrets and kill them as quickly as you can, using Spirit Walker's Grace to dodge around the shots if you have it available. Make liberal use of your survivability cooldowns here. There's a lot going on and it can be really hectic. But once one of the maidens die, it gets much easier. However, as soon as one of them dies, you can no longer Earthquake. So just go into your single target rotation and focus the next one, ordinarily Admiral Garan, down. Then finish off the last maiden and you're in the clear. Now let's do the trash up to Black Hand. Forge Mistress Flamehand requires you to stack up in a corner of the room and nuke her down. That's kind of it. She has a lot of health, so go ahead and use Ascendance. Use Guidance if the raid takes any damage from Living Blaze, and if you have it, run out and use Astral Shift and Shamanistic Rage to survive. Now for Black Hand. This is a short but intense fight. So, go with Elemental Mastery, Elemental Blast, and either Storm Elemental Totem if you don't have the 4-set tier bonus, or Elemental Fusion if you do. You're going to need to learn this fight step by step, for each of these steps is difficult and intense. For the Elemental Shaman, this will likely be an entirely single target fight. Pre-pot and activate your cooldowns as soon as the fight begins. So, Elemental Mastery, your Elemental, Ascendance, and any racials you have that will help. You need to get him to 70% health as quickly as possible without bloodlusting. Stay in the central circle. Don't wander off. Don't go near the melee in the slightest. The first demolition will come in. Use either Spirit Walker's Grace or coordinate with the hunters of your raid so you know when Aspect of the Fox is being used. Keep your single target damage up. Avoid the small circles as much as you can and get distance to the big ones to mitigate the damage you'll take. Use Astral Shift when the bigger demolition circles land and help the healers with Ancestral Guidance. Marks will go out, hang near a demolition pile so you can duck behind it quickly if you have to. The second demolition will come in. Do everything you can to mitigate your movement. Use Shamanistic Rage this time to mitigate the damage. Black Hand should transition either during or shortly after the second demolition. Make sure you never stand in between him and the demolition piles or you'll get hit by daggers and die. Once Black Hand runs to the center of the room and the Iron Star lands, don't be in the center of the room, reapply Flame Shock. As you land on the second floor, refresh your Fire Totem and consider a Healing Stream Totem as you get into position for the second phase. Continue DPSing Black Hand, Flame Shocking any Siege Makers that come along. Make sure you're not closest to them when they spawn, it's not your job to kite them. If the Siege Maker doesn't die fast enough because someone misses a mark, then you have to focus on it as quickly as you can. Generally, if the Siege Maker has been kited over a couple of bombs, after the first wave of marks, it should be at about 30%. If it's above that, throw a couple of spells out onto it. It takes double damage, so it shouldn't take much to get it down. The second wave of marks needs to finish it off. Also, give the Siegemaker some distance to avoid being slagged by mines, and naturally, watch your feet. Stay spread out, focus your DPS on Blackhand. Use Elemental Mastery for a second time as soon as it's available. It should be available shortly after you land. If Blackhand gets lower than 40% while you have Elemental Mastery available, you need to save it. If you get targeted by a mark and a Siegemaker is far away, use Ghost Wolf and Unleash Flame to give yourself a massive speed boost so you can get behind it in time to avoid being impaled. Remember, losing DPS here is okay, because if you get hit by one of these marks, chances are you're dead, and that's really bad in this fight. Everyone needs to be alive, really. This phase will get more and more intense as it goes on. As Blackhand gets lower, more raid damage will come out. The healers will have more to deal with, and things will be much nastier. Use a Shamanistic Rage near the end of this phase to help mitigate damage, and maybe a Guidance, but you need to save something for the final, very intense phase of this encounter. Keep your camera moving so that you can see everything, stay spread out, communicate with your raid team, and stay calm. Things are about to get damn serious. Once Blackhand reaches about 32% health, use Astral Shift because you're about to take a bunch of bloody damage from the transition. As you fall to the floor, get ready to Bloodlust. Blackhand will be pulled to a corner of the platform, the raid will stack up, then Bloodlust. Don't Bloodlust as soon as you land. Give it a bit of time so that everyone can get into position. At this point, pop everything you have left. Assuming you've been using Elemental Mastery on cooldown, it should be up for this phase. Use your second potion, your next Ascendance, and annihilate Blackhand. If you get a bomb, run to one side, ordinarily the left, and if you get marked, go to the other, ordinarily the right. Communicate with your raid so that you know how everything works. Stay directly behind the tank, not to their sides, or you'll get thrown the wrong way when the smash comes in. When it does come in, use any survivability spells you have left. Shamanistic Rage should be available at this point. Use Spirit Walker's Grace right before the smash comes in so that you can continue your rotation mid-air. Stack up and repeat this. If you're far away from something and you need to move, such as if you get targeted by a mark and you're in the middle of the raid and you're in the wrong position, Ghost Wolf it. Do not kill the raid with an impale. If you have to jump off the side and die so that your raid kills the boss, you do it, okay? You be a hero. Do everything you can to help the healers with guidance, healing stream totems, healing tonics, and unks if you die. But your damage matters a lot here. You need to try and kill him really fast because you do not have long. If you get knocked backwards out of range of the healers, remember that you can healing surge yourself to stay alive. Once Blackhand is dead, you're done. Congratulations! That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and you found it helpful. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, or feedback about this guide, then you can contact me using the links in the description, or you can just leave a comment. I'd be more than happy to answer your questions about being an Elemental Shaman in the Blackrock Foundry. Thanks go out to my patrons for their support, with special thanks today going out to Sly Knight. Thank you very much for watching, and I wish you the best of luck as Master of the Elements.